1, 2, 3.
There's a curious thing that happens over the course of taking an idea from its initial conception to where it eventually ends up in its final form. Oftentimes, the end result is nothing like what you began with. Take this video for example. If I could show you the first iteration of what I intended the video to be, you might not even recognize it compared to the video you're watching now. During the creation and multiple revisions, it's morphed and changed depending on what it is that I'm actually curious about. So let's jump right into this idea of following your curiosity and seeing what comes out the other side. What I'm curious about today is looking at the difference between Kodak Pro Image 100 film and the Fujifilm X100V Pro Neg film simulation. The Pro Neg film simulation was inspired by, but not specifically modeled after, Fujifilm's Pro line of films, such as Pro 400H and the various Pro 160 emulsions. It's not exactly like any of those films, but it is, generally speaking, similar. Because those films are all discontinued, I opted to shoot what I feel is the most comparable film stock, Kodak Pro Image 100. Our film camera will be the ever-capable Canon A1, aka the Aquaboy 3000, shooting the film at box speed of 100 ISO. The very first thing I'm noticing is the brightness of the highlights in the film versus the digital counterpart. The highlights of the film are much brighter and have much more punch to them, where the digital seems a little duller and less contrast. There is definitely a big difference in the color temperature between the digital and the film. The film is much more warm than the X100, and that warmth seems to be leaking into every color of the film. Just look at the difference in the greens of this sign. That color temperature difference is even more pronounced when looking at this image of the creepy white mask, where the X100 seems much more true to white, and the film is really leaning into the yellow spectrum. Just a note that all these images from the X100 are straight out of camera with no edits in post. Using the base configuration of the Pro Neg film standard simulation, the film images are also unedited in post, and are exactly what the development lab sent me. So we know that the colors are different, especially the greens, but I'm curious about which ones I actually like more. Which one is more aesthetically pleasing? If I had to choose between these images, I would say I prefer the X100 over the film. Yes, the film is brighter and warmer, but I love the depth and moody nature of the X100. Now this is where I think the X100 really shines over the Kodak Pro Image. I love the richness of the red bricks and how my subject seems to pop a little bit more than in the film. The film is leaning a little too much into the yellow again. I think the X100 is much more true to life color than what the film is producing. See, but on this one of the door that inevitably leads to Narnia, I like the film more than I like the X100. I think the brighter, warmer tones really work well and contrast great with the green vines. However, the X100 comes back with a clear win in my opinion with this image of the Broadway Commons. The building in real life was very red, as you can see in the X100. Where the film, it's just much more yellow, and the contrast just isn't there for me. So how do these compare when shooting cats, This one is difficult. On one hand, I like the film image more because the brightness and the warmth, but I think the X100 is a better image overall, because the cat looks like it's pretending to be King Kong and taking a bite right out of the building. I know that's not really an accurate comparison of the film versus digital, but hey, it's my video, so I get to make up the rules. Now this one, unfortunately, we aren't able to make an accurate comparison due to the inability of me as a photographer. I failed to notice that the Canon fired its flash and absolutely blew the ever-loving shit out of the foreground, turning our lovely green plants to a mush of white slop. We were lucky enough to get invited inside an old theater because they were shooting a movie and needed extras to sit in the audience, so we took the opportunity to photograph the stunning decor. This first image, I think, goes to the X100 because it's more true to life, but I do really like the warmth of the film here. I think it's got a really good feel to it. However, the Canon shooting Kodak 100 is severely handicapped when shooting inside. There just wasn't enough light to get a good exposure because the maximum aperture of the Aquaboy is only 3.5, where the X100 can shoot at much higher ISOs and has a max aperture of 2.0. You can see the drastic difference in this image of the seats. where in order to get the film to properly expose, I had to have the flash fire. But on the X100, it was able to get a much smoother image, and I absolutely love the color of the reds. Although I do like that because of the flash, it makes it so that the image falls off into some neat darkness. If only the foreground wasn't so blown out and sourcey from the flash. This one is another unfortunate flash situation where you get this flare of white because the flash reflected off the mirror and the frame. It's just too distracting and pulls focus from the image. This one, however, I absolutely have to give the win to the film. I love it. Even though I had to look like a complete crazy person in order to get the right framing. But hey, if you're not willing to lie on the floor for your shot, are you really that dedicated? I love the brightness and the contrast of the film. The whites are bright and not leaning too hard into the yellows. The vignette from the Canon A1 really draws you into the center of the image. I just love it. I think this one's great. Heading back outside, I'm gonna have to give this one to the film as well. I like the warmth of it. I think it gives off a really good feeling and has a bit of a nostalgic vibe to it. From here, we traveled up to Cleveland to explore the big city. And this is where I think the film really starts to beat out the digital X100. I love the bright, airy feeling of the film. Yes, it's still much warmer than the X100, but these images were shot in the middle of the day with bright yellow sun, so the warmth of the images feels right. This is one thing that I've really noticed with the X100, and honestly a lot of digital images in general. I was shooting the X100 on auto mode so that I wouldn't be messing up the images due to being a forgetful photographer. And the images all seem to be much more underexposed than the film. And yes, I know we can just boost the exposure in Lightroom, but I wanted to see how the camera was choosing to expose them on its own. And it consistently made them just a bit darker than the film. See, on this one, you could easily say that the film is overexposed, as a good portion of the sky is blown out, where on the X100, basically the entire image is properly exposed. But I have to say, I still like the film image more. I like the warmth, and I like the brightness of it. When it comes to this weird goblin face in the middle of the building, I think the X100 actually takes the cake on this one. I like the deeper reds over the yellow warmth of the film. But now we're heading out to the beach, and I think the film is the clear winner on most of these images, especially this one of the old man walking. I love the bright, warm feeling of the sand contrasting with the deep blue of the water and sky. Sure, you can see that the Canon A1 has a very deep vignette, but I like it, and I think it adds to the image. It kind of pulls you into the center subject. Though I am curious about where the ice is. It was a bright, beautiful summer day. The sun was super harsh and the shadows were super dark. But hey, nobody ever said that I chose to shoot film in smart situations. And sometimes I climb poles, just for the fun of it. This image of the shipping container where I tried to line up the water to make it look like the lake was flowing into the container really shows well the color difference between the film stock and the digital. The greens are totally different, the reds are more red on the digital and much more orange on the film. I really like this image of the bars looking out over Lake Erie. I think the film comes away with the W for this one because I like the brightness as well as the warmth of the water. Yes, the X100 is probably more true to life, but I like the film more, so deal with it. Then it was time to get a little weird and lay on the ground again. I wish this image had come out as well as I had hoped it would. I really wanted to be able to see the lighthouse way in the distance, but unfortunately, it's nothing but a tiny, tiny speck. The cones are going to be the film as well. It just takes the cake. The vignette as well as the warmth really make the image pop more than the X100. This image of the couple sitting in their beach chairs also goes to the film. The brightness and warmth just really work on bright sunny days. Maybe that's the deciding factor of film versus digital. On the colder, overcast days, the digital was the clear winner, where on the bright, harsh, sunny days, I definitely prefer the colors of the film. I then did my best to not get hit by a car, as well as a golf cart, to get this last image in Ohio. I think the win definitely goes to the film here as well. It's the brightness and warmth again. And yes, the sky is a bit blown out, but that's okay. It looks good to my eyes. So how do these compare when shooting an old rusty motorcycle? I think this one goes to the X100. I like the greens much more. I think they have more depth. Although I do really like the flare of the highlight that the film gets on the shiny bits of the bike. This photo of the old VW bus is a flop, and obviously has to go to the X100 because it's actually framed correctly, and the reds contrasted with the green, oh, they're just fantastic. My boy Jay skating his backyard ramp, however, this one goes to the film. I like the brighter, more vintage feeling of it over the digital. I'm not sure if I can say the same about the second image of Jay skating. I think the X100 comes out on top here. It's got a better frame, even though this motion blur we've got going on here is quite nice. Saving the best for last. This image of Haley, that not only is it beautiful with the killer sun flare right in the middle of the action, but also the fact that it was the last frame of the roll and I was gifted a spare frame that also has a bit of the previous frame superimposed onto it. It's one of those happy accidents of film that just happen randomly and I absolutely love.
Tell me when you're ready.
Oh, I pressed the button!
Oh no, that's so sad. I'm sorry.
Kevin! You can't do that with film. Wait, it feels like there's another frame.
Okay.
It feels like there's another.
Why not?
We're gonna try again. Okay.
We'll try it. You tell me when you're ready and then I'll mentally prepare.
Okay. I am ready.
Okay, next one.
That was it for sure.
It flashed.
It flashed.
So what are your thoughts? Was this even an accurate comparison? Is Kodak Pro Neg at all similar to Fujifilm's Pro Neg simulation? Or was this all for naught? Let me know in the comments. And stay tuned for the next episode of Comparisons, where we compare an actual Fujifilm film stock to its digital simulation. We're going back out to the desert to shoot Fujifilm Pro Via and see how accurate it is. Much love, and I'll see you next time.